You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio once again. We are here today, and just like any other time, we have another amazing show for y'all today. If you love movies, if you love TV, if you love stuntman, well, today we have a true awesome guest. We have Brian Hite. He has a website, brianhiteglobal.com. Man, if you talk about sports and just action and just not being scared of doing the stunts, this is a guy we're going to have fun talking to. He's a stuntman with over 100 film and TV credits. He's an expertise when it comes to organizational psychology, Ph.D., performance and motivation, leadership development, high stakes experience from Hollywood and the U.S. Army. And he has many other services that we'll dive into. But first, I want to introduce Brian. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Had to trim it down, man, because like, oh man, it's about to be 2 minutes into the show. But all jokes aside, I appreciate you clearing the calendar for the interview today. Kind of break down for the audience how you got into this professional career as a stuntman.
Well, it's interesting because I mean, as a stuntman, I started in college. That's where that started. I graduated high school, went to college with no idea what I was going to do. And 2 years into college, still had no idea what I was going to do. And then I ended up going to, and it was Rutgers where I was. So it was in New Jersey. And there was a Six Flags out there that a friend of mine was the company manager of a stunt show out there. It was the Batman stunt show. And he got me some tickets. I went out to see the show and I was floored. I was awed by the fact that was it. That it was even a job that people did, that they were getting paid, and that was it. I was hooked. And I went backstage. I talked to the people and asked them, "How do you get this job? How do you get to do this?" And honestly, and it's funny if you want to go back to it because that's a question I've gotten in the 30 years since. I don't even know how many times, thousands probably. But their answer to it was, you got to know how to do high falls, falling from high places, and do fights and do motorcycles. Because there were some dirt bike things happening in that show. So I went with one of the performers. We scheduled some stuff. I learned high falls and fights, and I bought a dirt bike and I learned how to do that stuff. Went to the audition, got the job, did that job that summer the summer after my junior year, and was 100%. I was in, and I couldn't focus on school anymore. I knew I wanted to do stunts. So my senior year came, and I almost failed out. I had to drop my classes the second semester because I just couldn't pay any attention. But I stayed in New Jersey. I did the show one more summer there, moved out to LA and did the same show out in the Six Flags out there too, which was a really lucky break for me because it allowed me to do stunts in LA, making some money doing stunts while trying to get into the film and TV world. And that's a hard thing to do. So that's how I got into stunts, is through that. And then honestly, the Stuntman Softball League got playing softball with other stunt guys. It's a word of mouth business. So once you're in, you start meeting some people, and then they introduce you to some other people, and then you work on a show and you meet some other people, and it just builds and builds and builds. So that's how I got into stunts. Now where I am now is a whole different place, although it incorporates stunts. And I love that because for a long time, I felt like my life was going in a couple different directions, meaning which hat am I going to wear today? Am I a stuntman today? Or am I a sport performance psychologist today? Or am I an author today? Like, what am I doing today? And now I've found a way to kind of blend all of that stuff. So like you said, my PhD is organizational psychology. My master's degree is sports psychology. And I did work with the Army for a while as a sport performance psychology consultant, doing that work full time with kind of stunts on the side. When somebody would call, I'd take a vacation day and I'd go work on the show and then come back to my job. And so it was two different lines of effort, really, sometimes three. But now I've with the keynote speaking and with my own business, that I'm able to really focus the subject matter in a way that brings my experience from stunts into the experience of sport and performance psychology and transitions that into the business realm, the performance realm, the athletic realm, whatever it might be. That's been a lot of fun. And because it feels like now I'm just wearing one hat. And it's a whole lot easier when I get up and like, what am I going to do? I'm going to pursue this. And it's been great. And I still do stunts. In fact, I'm working on, we're recording this on Tuesday. I'll be working on Thursday on a TV show out here in Nashville. So it's still something I do, but yeah, it's been a journey trying to figure out how to meld that stunt world with the sport performance psychology world in the way that I've managed to do for the most part. It's a work in progress, it's all a journey, but that's where I'm at.
When you think about Hollywood actors, actresses, you think about individuals who have someone representing them. As a stuntman, hearing from you, it sounds like you kind of do it solo and you're just networking. Is that the case, or are there actual stuntmen who have someone representing them and kind of negotiating contracts or just navigating the business side?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. The stunt coordinators, most of the bigger ones, they do have agents that are shopping them around to different producers and getting them interviews for the shows. But at the stuntman level, you might get an agent for commercials because commercials work a little bit differently. But mostly, no, the stunt people, they're not. I don't know that I've ever gotten a job from an agent in 30 years. I've had a couple agents, still have one right now today, but I don't think I've ever gotten a job through an agent. It's always just been, I knew somebody or I knew the stunt coordinator directly or whatever it is, but you get a call is what it is. I mean, your phone rings and says, hey, are you available on this day? And you either are or you aren't. So yeah, the representation thing is not really a part of the stunt people world anywhere nearly at the level that it is with the actor level or the actor, type of performer.
Once again, you're watching and listening to Refocused Radio, talking to our guest today. You go to his website, BrianHiteGlobal.com. My next question is, knowing that detail, how did you deal with demand on your schedule and also potential burning out? Because I can imagine if this is something that is your bread and butter or other things are your bread and butter, it takes a little balance to what's going on in my schedule, my calendar.
Yeah, those are actually two different questions, but they meld together very well because the burnout for me, and this is just me personally, I don't like just doing one thing and just focusing on, I don't know, just be a stuntman and just be the best stuntman you can. And everything is about stunts. You're going to train all the time and you're going to network all the time. Everything is related to stunts. I like more than that. I liked learning about other material, and that's where I got into the sport performance stuff. That didn't come. I didn't get the master's or the Ph.D. because I ever thought I'd work in the field. It was just, I was a stuntman and I was interested in more things than stunts. And I started to learn and I thought, well, let's just get a degree. This is kind of fun. And it was just a different thing I could do. And then I found out about it. I started working with some athletes. I enjoyed that. And then I was doing the stunts. And so I really am a person who likes to do multiple things. And I think that the multiple things, my ability to, or not ability to, but my desire to have those different avenues of pursuit has helped with the burnout, has helped limit the burnout or limit the lack of motivation that sometimes comes. Now, that's not to say that there haven't been times along the way when I've woken up and thought, I just want to stay in bed. I don't want to do it anymore. It's too hard. I wasn't getting work or, whatever the efforts were that I was putting forward weren't paying off. And that's been true not only in stunts, but in the entrepreneur world too, of having my own business. It's kind of the same thing. You get up and you try to do your best to build your brand and to market stuff and to find some clients and to work with those clients. And for me, I like to write as well. So I'll sit down and I'll write. And some days it feels like it's paying off, and other days it just feels like I'm spinning wheels. But when those days come, I'm able to shift gears. I can, if I'm truly in a place with one of those lines of effort that I just can't keep going, I'll just switch to another one. And it gives me a little bit of newness, gives me a little bit of break from what I was doing before. So that's why I say, your questions are great when in terms of how do you avoid burnout or lack of motivation, and how does it connect? Because it connects just like that. The multiple things that I do. Now, as far as the calendar, that is challenging. And I don't know if somebody's got an answer for how to do that. I'm I'm here to hear it, because I've tried all kinds of things. I've tried to block things in the calendar. I've tried to make sure that I do one of everything one day, or I've tried to say, nope, this day is all of this. I've tried all the things, and I still can't figure out how to do, because, life changes, things come up. And I don't know if you have kids, or those of you, who have families, kids, stuff happens. They get sick. There's soccer practice. There's whatever the other things are, and things change. And so to try to create and stick to a rigid schedule, which I would love it if I could have a calendar, just like, all right, it's all going to work, but it has never worked. So I don't know, man. Shoot me an email if somebody comes up with the answer to that question, because I'm ready for it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that is a question that no one can give a final answer to, because to your point, everything will change. I always like to say in my next life, I'm going to be a comedian, because that's how life is sometimes. Life happens and it doesn't give you notice. It just comes, it shows up, and there's no rehearsal. There's no, hey, about 2 hours from now, I'm giving you a warning about this happening. No, life will just happen. You had to make adjustments. And that, speaking of shifting gears, when life does happen, what are the things you try to do to keep that internal drive, to keep going? Because it's one thing to get knocked down, and not to be cliche, but it's a choice to stand up again and say, you know what, I'm not quitting. And we all know how hard it is to keep going, but somebody has to do it, man.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, resilience is what you're talking about. And just to go big picture before we get into the nuances, resilience it's really a math equation. It comes down to the number of resources we have and the strength of those resources. So the more resources we have, and by that I mean physical resources, mental resources, social resources, emotional resources, financial resources, a lot of different kinds of resources. But the more resources we have and the better able we are to use them, the more likely we are to be able to come back from adversity when it strikes. And not only come back from it, but actually become better from it, to be able to grow, to thrive, to improve as a result of going through whatever challenges we have. So that's resilience in a big picture. So the question becomes, all right, so how do we develop those resources? Well, we got to take stock of the resources we currently have. What do we have? What do we not have? And so that we can fill in the gaps. So if I know that, if I take a look at my physical resources, if I know I'm not exercising right, and I know I'm not eating right, I know I'm not getting enough sleep, well, these are things that I can change that really, and this is something that people talk about mind-body connection and all that. I don't even know if it's a connection. I don't know that there's a difference between the two, because what's going on inside our bodies physically absolutely impacts us mentally. And it doesn't take anything more than one night of bad sleep to recognize that, because we can't focus, and our patience is lower, and our emotional regulation is we can't regulate emotions as well. So it doesn't take a whole lot to recognize that moving the needle in one is going to move the needle in the others. So with the physical, we can take a look at those physical things, and then mental, same thing. Let's start recognizing when we're taking on a can't attitude, a pessimistic attitude, or how we choose to perceive situations, or the types of things that we say to ourselves in different circumstances. And emotionally, when different emotions come up, what are they? Let's name them. Let's get at that. There's a book by a really just a wonderful author, speaker. Her name's a researcher. Her name's Brene Brown. I believe the University of Houston is where she is, but the book's called Atlas of the Heart. And in it, she lists 84 emotions. She names them and she distinguishes them so that we can have a language to understand them. So it's not just mad, sad, whatever. It's those are very broad. It's getting into the nuances so we can better understand how we feel. So developing that ability to recognize the emotions and manage them. And then socially, if I'm isolated, if I'm by myself, if I don't really have a support system, that's not good. If nothing in the literature on resilience is clear, that people matter. We have to have connections. Humans are social creatures. So taking stock of what our support system looks like. Who is it? How many people do we have? How accessible are they? How much interaction do we have with them? How comfortable are we talking to them about the different things going on in our lives? So in order to to enhance that resilience that you're talking about, that's so important. That's one aspect. I mean, those are the things, if we can build those resources. But the last thing I'll say, because you ended your question very, very interestingly, how do you get up when you get knocked down and you just, it's just hard. The way that I try to do that is to connect my values, the things that I truly care about, my core values, my core beliefs, to whatever behaviors I need to do. So I may recognize I don't want to do it. It's too hard. I don't see that it's making any progress. But if I recognize my value is perseverance, my value is growth and improvement, whatever my values are that really just define me, that make me who I am at my heart. Identifying what those are and connecting them to the behaviors. Because if we can do that, then the behaviors, although we may still not enjoy them, it will be easier to engage in them. So that's, as far as motivation and getting going when we really don't want to feel that way, identify your core values, connect them to those behaviors. If you do, the energy and the effort will come. The effort will come.
Once again, watching and listening to Refocused Radio, talking to our guest today, Brian Hite. When you had the experience to work with not just leaders, but high performers, you also have been able to unpack what is it like to deal with pressure. And pressure, I think, translates to growth opportunities. But sometimes we can get distracted by the actual pressure itself, and we can miss our chances for that growth. Kind of touch on that, the audience, just how you work with your clients and helping them understand the difference between pressure and recognizing opportunity to grow.
Yeah, pressure. There's a program that I have called Pressure X that I offer for individuals as well as groups. And really the idea behind it is I don't think pressure is a real thing in the sense that many people do. In other words, people will talk to me all the time about pressure situations. Like, we have to learn how to perform well under pressures. We got to get good at pressure situations, be able to handle ourselves in pressure situations. And I don't think such a thing exists. It's not the situation that will determine whether we experience pressure. It's how we perceive the situation that will determine whether we experience pressure. Pressure exists in the mind, not in the moment. And so when I say that pressure is not real, I think of it as an illusion. It's one of those things that like some of the illusions, and there are several that come up. I mean, they're pretty famous. There's one with the two silhouettes looking at each other, silhouetted faces, or you can see a chalice or a glass of some sort. Like, there are a lot of illusions like that. And if you look at it one way, it looks like a glass. And if you look at it the other way, it looks like two faces. So it's the same information. It's the same situation, but we're just choosing to look at it differently. And when we do, we see different things. Well, in our lives, when we experience these circumstances, these situations that really matter to us, they're important. We can choose to look at it in a way that will create pressure for us, or we can choose to look at it in a way that doesn't. And the distinguishing feature there is the outcome. When we focus on the outcome of something, particularly something that's very, very important to us, that we really think matters, that's where pressure lives. When we think about, man, if I screw this up, then I'm going to lose my job. I'm not going to have any money. I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. Those are bad consequences. And you know what? They might even be real consequences. I'm not saying that people make them up. But if that's where our focus is on those outcomes, the end state, then what we're missing is attention to what will actually help us, which is, in this moment, right now, what can I do? What are the steps I can take? What are the things that can be done now in this moment? Not the future that I'm imagining, but this moment that's actually happening. What can I do now? Because if we shift our attention from the future, meaning the possible consequences, to the now we can identify, okay, well, what can I do? What things can I control? What might be done to move us a little bit closer to where I want to go, to create conditions that will make it more likely that we'll be successful. Won't guarantee success. It won't guarantee that failure won't happen and that the bad consequences you thought of wouldn't occur, but it will certainly make it much more likely. And as soon as our attention shifts from the future and those consequences to the now, this moment, and the things that we can do, pressure disappears. That's the illusion part. So it's all about where we put our attention as to whether we experience pressure or we don't. And by the way, the consequences, it's not just if we focus on bad consequences. I could go into the same situation. Man, if I do this well, this is going to punch my ticket. I'm going to be off and running. I'm going to have no more problems for the rest of my life. That also creates a lot of pressure. So by focusing on the consequences and particularly the intensity and severity and importance of those consequences, we're missing. That creates a lot of pressure, and it's redirecting our attention in an unproductive way. Instead, we need to refocus our attention in this moment, the now, what we can do now that can create conditions for success.
And I like how the idea that whenever you're going through life or whatever, life happens to you, you have a decision to make. Do you fall back on your core values? Do you fall back on the reason why? I like saying the North Star. You know, what was your North Star that gets you out of the funk, that gets you out of the victim mentality? Like, why me? You know, I'm the only one in this world that's going through some issues, and that's not necessarily true. To your point, how we look at things, that can determine our ability to get through things. Because a lot of times we're in the thick of things and we just quit and we wonder why things are not getting better. But if we just hang on and try to self-awareness, see what's going on and be true to ourselves, then that can ignite ways to be innovative. So that way you're not doing the same thing over and over again, wondering why you get the same results.
Yeah, and to just add a couple more things on there. Yes, one great way to get yourself out of the funk and get going is to connect the whatever it is you're talking about getting going, doing, to your values. That's absolutely one. Another, to your point, of way to get yourself out of some of that stuff of just that wallowing in the woe is me part, is just recognizing, and this is true. This is true the vast majority of the time, if not all the time. If we remind ourselves that whatever problem we're having, whatever situation we're in that we think is so bad, there's somebody somewhere on this planet who wishes that they had that problem. That their problems are so much worse that if they could switch places with you, they would do it in a heartbeat. So that's another way. And then another thing that does become easier with practice. It's a hard thing initially, but it's a valid way of looking at things, and it becomes easier with practice, is to recognize, even if I fail, goodness comes. And that's just fact. If failure happens, in fact, I think that we learn more through failure than we do success most of the time. So if we screw up, if things don't go the way we want them to go, there's still goodness that can come from that. Wisdom happens. And even the act of engaging, just putting ourselves, as Theodore Roosevelt said, into the arena, we benefit. We benefit from just engagement, from the attempt itself. And then it becomes, if we start worrying about it ahead of time, okay, well, let's say that I do fail. Let's say that I screw up. What good might come from that? How might I benefit? What are some things I could learn? What's some experience that I will gain? What's some wisdom that I will walk away with, regardless of whether I win or lose?
Once again, if you want to learn more about Brian and what he does, you can go to his website, brianhiteglobal.com. In a couple of minutes we have left. When you see the opportunities that are in your life, just in your personal life, not anybody else but Brian's life, what have you been able to do over the years that has helped you reach those new heights in your career, where in a lot of people's minds, they always fear plateauing, flatlining, and not reaching their fullest potential? What have you done personally to do that for yourself?
I think two things really, I guess three things come to mind. One is openness, another's flexibility, and another's courage. So openness in the sense of just being open to those opportunities, because I believe that opportunities come all the time. Now, it's like Eminem, he said in the whatever the song is that he does, this opportunity comes once in a lifetime. Yes, it does. The opportunity that I'm experiencing today comes once in a lifetime, but there's going to be another one tomorrow, and there'll be another one after that. And if I'm open to the fact that opportunities do come regularly, then I can grasp them, I can recognize them, and I can try to pursue them. Now, the flexibility part means that if I see the opportunity, probably I'm already pursuing something else. So if I see another opportunity, it's going to mean that I have to shift gears a little bit. And that requires flexibility. And this can be one of the problems people have with goal setting, is that they'll set goals and then they'll think to themselves, okay, this is my goal. This is what I've set. I can't quit. I can't give up. Some other opportunity will come up and they'll be tempted and they'll think, no, I already said I was going to do this, so I have to do this. And they'll miss that chance to just flex, to move, and goals are great. Don't get me wrong. I think that they're wonderful, but we set them with the knowledge that we have and the experience that we have at that particular point in time. But then we keep living and we keep getting more experience and more knowledge. And with that more experience and more knowledge may come the recognition that that goal that we set however long ago isn't the right goal for us anymore. And we need to be okay flexing, to be flexible in those situations. And then the last thing is courage, meaning it can be scary to go outside, on a limb and go outside the comfort zone and do something that's uncertain. So we need the courage to be able to, and again, courage isn't the lack of fear, it's the recognition of fear and the ability to move forward anyway. Like at the beginning of this whole thing, you were talking about not being afraid of stunts. Of course I'm afraid of stunts, absolutely. There are things that I do that I'm afraid of. That's why I'm sitting here in one piece right now. Because if I wasn't afraid, I may not be. There's no telling what kind of nonsense I would have gotten myself into. But there's courage in that I understand the fear. I do a thorough and hopefully accurate job of assessing what the risks are and then moving forward with mitigating those risks as well as I can. But I can't eliminate all the risks in stunts or in life. There's no way. So we have to adopt courage, and we have to recognize that even if we go out on that limb, like I said before, we have the capability to not only bounce back, but to grow and thrive from the experience of whether we succeed or fail. But that courage is what is the jumping off point. So once we recognize that opportunity through openness and we're flexible enough to realize that we're going to shift from what we were doing to what we now are going to do based on that opportunity, we have to have that courage to actually launch us toward that opportunity.
You've been listening and watching on Refocused Radio, talking to our guest today, Brian Hite. Go to his website, brianhiteglobal.com. Before we close officially, are there any additional resources that people can find on your website, or anything you want to plug, like events or books or selling something?
Yeah, if you go to the website, you'll see a couple of books. One is Begin Again, Utilize the Wisdom of Eastern and Western Ideologies to Achieve Your Full Potential. That's just a series of 183 really short essays. They're easy reads that are structured like, okay, here's a problem that a lot of people have. Here's some information about that problem. And then here are some things that you can try. And if you try them out, you'll probably see some benefit. That's 183 of those. There's another book that I wrote a chapter in. I didn't write the whole thing, but I contributed a chapter. It's called The Change. That's on my website too. That's a chapter on resilience, on how I view resilience. And it's told through the lens of a stunt story on Hawaii Five-0. It was a stunt that I did on that show that went wrong and then went right. So those are a couple books. And then I have a few programs that I'm working to. I told you about Pressure X before, which is targeting pressure and how we can see that differently and actually use those experiences to our advantage. Another is Motivation Blueprint, which is just about motivation. What goes into levels of motivation? What goes into the kinds of motivation that we have? And how do we achieve the optimal versions of both that allow us to move forward, both as individuals and if we're leaders? How do we create those conditions in our organizations? And the last is called Phase X, and that's a 4-phased approach to performance that we developed when I was at the Army that gets into the before, the right before, the during, and the after phases of any performance, literally all of them. And the before, during, after part of performance isn't new, but the right before part is one that has never been put out there before we published it in a journal back in, I don't know, 2010 or 2011 or something. But the whole point of that program is to walk people through, okay, so how do you create those phases? How do you define them for your performances? And how does your unique situation fit into those different places so that you can create conditions for your own success, not once, but consistently throughout whatever performance you have? So those are those. And then you can find me on social media. I'm on Facebook. It's, I believe, Brian Hite 1. I'm on LinkedIn, Brian C. Hite on there. I'm on Instagram. That's Brian_Hite 23. And that's where you can get me. Or you can just send me a note through the website, or that's fine too. You can send me a note through there. And if you do, and you do want to check out some of these programs, just tell me that you want to do that, and I'll give you 35% off of whatever it is you want to buy. Just say you heard it on the podcast right here, and 35% off coupon will be coming your way.
Well, once again, appreciate that. Been listening and watching on Refocused Radio, talking to our guest today, Brian Hite. Go to his website, brianhiteglobal.com. Like always, wanted to say thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a great conversation. I appreciate it.